Welcome to Cartoons and Stories '01, where exciting adventures and fun cartoons come to life. Get ready for a world of imagination.
This is the story of a brave young woman who risked everything to save her people. It's a story of courage, hidden identity, and a victory against all odds, set in the heart of the mighty Persian Empire. Part 1. A queen is deposed. In the grand citadel of Susa, the heart of the Persian Empire, King Xerxes sat on his glorious throne. For 180 days, he showed off the vast wealth of his kingdom, a dazzling display for his most important officials and princes. When the grand display was over, the king held a 7-day banquet for everyone in the citadel, from the greatest to the least. The feast was held in the palace garden, decorated with fine white and blue linen, fastened with purple cords to silver rings and marble pillars. Guests relaxed on couches of gold and silver, set on a beautiful mosaic pavement of precious stones. Royal wine was served freely in golden goblets, each one different from the next, a testament to the king's generosity. The king's rule for the banquet was simple. There were no rules. Everyone could drink as much or as little as they wanted. At the same time, Queen Vashti was hosting her own banquet for the women inside the royal palace. On the 7th day, his heart full of wine, King Xerxes had an idea. He called for his 7 most trusted eunuchs who served him personally. He commanded them to bring Queen Vashti before him, wearing her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to all the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. The king's servants went to the queen's banquet and delivered the king's command. But Queen Vashti refused to come. She would not be put on display like a trophy. When the servants returned with her answer, the king became furious. His anger burned within him. The king immediately turned to his wise men, the experts in law and justice who understood the times. According to the law, the king asked, "What must be done to Queen Vashti for disobeying my command?" One of the wise men, named Memucan, spoke up before the king and the other officials. "Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king," he said, "but every noble and every person in all the provinces of the empire. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and they will also disrespect their husbands. They will say, 'King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, one that can never be changed. Let it state that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes, and let the king give her royal position to someone else who is more worthy than she.' When this decree is proclaimed throughout the vast empire, every wife will respect her husband, from the greatest to the least." The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all parts of his kingdom, to each province in its own script, declaring that every man should be the ruler of his own house. Part 2. A new queen is chosen. Later, when the king's anger had cooled, he thought about Vashti and what she had done, and what he had decreed against her. His personal attendants saw his sadness and made a suggestion. "Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province to bring all the beautiful young women to the citadel of Susa. They shall be placed in the care of Hege, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king the most become queen instead of Vashti." This advice seemed good to the king. so he put the plan into action. Now, in the citadel of Susa, there lived a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin, named Mordecai. Mordecai had a cousin he had raised as his own daughter, for she had no father or mother. Her name was Esther. Esther was lovely in form and features, with a captivating beauty. When the king's order and decree were proclaimed, many young women were brought to Susa. Esther was among them. She was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, the one in charge of the king's harem. Esther pleased Hegai and won his favor immediately. He quickly provided her with her beauty treatments, special food, and assigned 7 female attendants to her from the king's palace. He moved her and her attendants into the best part of the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day Mordecai would walk back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Each young woman had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments before her turn to go to the king. For 6 months, they were treated with oil of myrrh, and for the next 6 months, with perfumes and cosmetics. And after all that, it was her turn to go to the king. She could take whatever she wanted with her, from the harem to the palace. In the evening she would go, and in the morning she would return to a second harem under the care of a different eunuch. She would not go back to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Hegai, the king's attendant, suggested, and Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, during the 7th year of his reign. The king was captivated. He loved Esther more than all the other women. She had won his grace and favor more than any of the others. More so, he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. The king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal generosity. But during this time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, a position for minor officials. Esther still kept her family background a secret, just as Mordecai had told her to do. She continued to follow his instructions as she had when he was bringing her up, while Mordecai was at the king's gate. 2 of the king's officers who guarded the doorway became angry and plotted to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot. He went and told Queen Esther, who was his only link to the king. Esther then reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai for the information. The matter was investigated and found to be true. The 2 officials were found guilty and hanged on a gallows. And all of this was recorded in the book of the Annals, the official chronicles, in the presence of the king. Part 3. Haman's Rise, an Awful Plan. Sometime later, King Xerxes honored Haman, a man descended from Agag, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. The king commanded that all the royal officials at the king's gate must kneel down and pay honor to Haman. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. The royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to listen. He had told them that he was a Jew, and his faith would not allow him to bow to any man. So the officials told Haman to see if Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated. When Haman saw for himself that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet, knowing who Mordecai's people were, He scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. In the first month of the 12th year of King Xerxes, the lot called a pur was cast in the presence of Haman to choose a day and month. The lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. Then Haman went to the king. There is a certain people scattered among the provinces of your kingdom, whose customs are different from all other people. He lied. And they do not obey the king's laws. He continued, it is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. And I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury. The king took his signet ring from his finger, the symbol of his authority, and gave it to Haman. Keep the money, the king said, and do with the people as you see fit. Royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out Haman's orders to every part of the empire. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with his own ring, making it official law. Couriers were sent with the dispatches to all the king's provinces. The order was to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day. That day was to be the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. The decree also gave permission to plunder their goods. A copy of the text was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality so they would be ready for that day. Spurred on by the king's command, the couriers went out, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered and thrown into confusion. Part 4. For such a time as this. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he only went as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province where the edict of the king arrived, there was great mourning among the Jewish people. They were fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Queen Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa. He told Hathach to show it to Esther, explain it to her, and to urge her to go into the king's presence, to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther everything Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "There is a law that I cannot ignore. All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, there is but one law, that they be put to death. The only exception is for the one to whom the king extends the golden scepter, that they may live. And I myself have not been summoned to come to the king for 30 days. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. 4. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Part 5. The First Banquet. On the 3rd day of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes. She stood in the inner court of the palace, in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne, facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her. He held out to her the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you." "If it pleases the king," replied Esther, "let the king, together with Haman, come today to a banquet I have prepared for him." "Bring Haman at once," the king said, "so that we may do what Esther has asked." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. As they were drinking wine, the king again asked Esther, "Now what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Esther replied, "My petition and my request is this: if the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then," she promised, "I will answer the king's question." Haman went out that day happy and in high spirits. But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against him. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. Calling together his friends and his wife Zeresh, Haman boasted to them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored him. "And that's not all," he said. "I'm the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she gave, and she has invited me along with the king tomorrow. But all this gives me no satisfaction," he complained. "As long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate." His wife Zeresh and all his friends said, "Have a pole set up, reaching a height of 75 feet, and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go cheerfully with the king to the banquet." The suggestion delighted Haman, and he had the massive poles set up. Part 6. A Sleepless Night. That very night, the king could not sleep, so he ordered the Book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was read, and the part was found that recorded how Mordecai had exposed the 2 officers who had conspired to assassinate the king. What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? The king asked. Nothing has been done for him. His attendants answered, "Who is in the court?" The king asked. Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace. He was there to speak to the king about impaling Mordecai on the pole he had set up for him. The king's attendants said, "Haman is standing in the court. Bring him in," the king ordered. When Haman entered, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Haman thought to himself, "Who is there that the king would rather honor than me?" So he answered the king, "For the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden." one with a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. Go at once.' The king commanded Haman, 'Get the robe and the horse, and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended.' So Haman got the robe and the horse. He robbed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city streets. And as he led him, he proclaimed, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.' Afterwards, Mordecai returned to the king's gate, his honor restored. But Haman rushed home, with his head covered in grief and humiliation. Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him. His advisers and his wife said to him, 'Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin.' While they were still talking, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman away to the banquet Esther had prepared. Part 7. The Second Banquet and the Fall of Haman. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. As they were drinking wine on the second day, the king again asked, 'Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted.' Then Queen Esther answered, 'If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life, this is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated.' King Xerxes was stunned. He demanded of Queen Esther, 'Who is he? Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing?' Esther said, 'An adversary and enemy, this vile Haman, Ben.' Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in a rage, left his wine, and went out into the palace garden. But Haman, realizing that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. Just as the king returned from the palace garden, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, 'Will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house?' As soon as the words left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Ben, one of the eunuchs serving the king, said, 'A pole, 75 feet high, stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, the one who spoke up to help the king.' The king said, 'Impale him on it.' So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. Part 8. A people are saved. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman. But the first decree, sealed with the king's ring, could not be revoked. So the king told Esther and Mordecai, "You yourselves write a new decree in the king's name and seal it with the king's signet ring." A new decree was written, granting the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves. They were given the right to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality that might attack them and their families on the 13th day of Adar. The new decree was sent out, and for the Jewish people there was light and joy, gladness and honor. On the day the decree went into effect, the Jews assembled in their cities to defend themselves. No one could stand against them. They struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them. On the following day, they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. Mordecai recorded these events and established the Feast of Purim, a time to remember how their sorrow was turned into joy. It was to be celebrated every year, a reminder of the lots that were cast against them and the deliverance that saved them. Mordecai the Jew became second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews and held in high esteem by his people. He worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. And so, the story of Queen Esther and her courage is remembered. A story of how one person, in the right place at the right time, can save a nation. BN.